Clearly, Afghanistan remains in focus of the international affairs and naturally in the Russian-Indian cooperation agenda. Our engagements demonstrate that our approaches and evaluations are very close. As a follow-up of the telephone conversation between President Putin and Prime Minister Modi on August 24th and their decision to establish a high-level channel of communications on Afghanistan, Secretary of the Security Council of Russia, Nikolai Patrushev, visited New Delhi on September 8th and had detailed delegation-level consultations with Indian NSA Ajit Doval. They agreed on forward-looking coordination bilaterally and multilaterally, including information and intelligence sharing, capacity building with regard to regional security, modern tactics, defense and anti-terrorist exercises, training, focusing bilateral mechanisms such as Indra exercises and 2+2 on Afghanistan. Mr. Patrushev also had very fruitful talks with Prime Minister Modi and Dr. Jaishankar. Currently, Russia continues to watch very closely the developments in Afghanistan. We hope that the country will be able to come back to normal life after the process of internal settlement and establishment of power structures in order is over, in accordance with the interests of all ethnic and political forces. We also noted plans of Taliban to conduct general elections. Russia believes it's too early to recognize Taliban, who shaped the interim government, which is far from being inclusive. At the same time, it would also be premature to make final judgments today. Recognition would require collective decisions of the international community in the United Nations, within the Troika, within the Moscow dialogue, which can be convened with the broad participation of the SCO, CSTO and other partners upon mutual consent. We believe it's important to maintain contacts with Taliban in order to ensure security and safety of citizens of Russia and our partners from CSTO and Community of Independent States. Another purpose is to stimulate and motivate Taliban to complete national reconciliation process and establishment of inclusive government to ensure sustainable and result-oriented intra-Afghan dialogue. In all, Taliban now is responsible for the future of Afghanistan. Russia doesn't pose any conditions on Taliban. We keep talking about that from the very beginning, and now it's realized even by the West, whose policy in Afghanistan and other countries has failed. We should avoid any interference in domestic affairs and teach other nations how to live. Taliban themselves committed to particular goals, including in the areas of fighting against terrorism, drug trafficking, non-threatening neighbors and other states, shaping an inclusive government. By the way, during the last 20 years, drug production in Afghanistan has increased 40 times. Consistently during the Ghani government, and now we are of strong opinion that the process should be Afghan-led. As far as the problem of migrants is concerned, it's another real problem coming out of severe social and economic crisis in the country. The main burden for their accommodation should be taken by the Western countries, first of all the US and NATO allies, which stayed in Afghanistan for 20 years and tried to teach Afghans how to build democracy and how to fight. No other comments on that. They have direct responsibility for the Afghanistan crisis. Consequently, the Western countries should take major responsibility for economic reconstruction of Afghanistan and its infrastructure. Relevant collective efforts should also be made by the international community. Russia supports the idea to convene a representative donorship conference under the United Nations. Around half of the population in Afghanistan is suffering severe humanitarian crisis. Otherwise, there is a growing danger of increased drug trafficking and weapons smuggling. We should also work with the US and other partners for staged or gradual lifting of assets freeze and resumption of World Bank and IMF relevant programs. Along with that, we shouldn't underestimate the ISIS factor in Afghanistan, which hasn't abandoned its plans for global caliphate and spread of radicalization and extremism, including in the Central Asia, that is posing a direct threat to Russia as well. Last week, there were summits of the CSTO and the SCO, which were of critical importance, especially in the current circumstances. Their outcomes show the unequivocal importance of collective efforts of regional powers to ensure security and safety in the common Eurasian space. There was even a combined CSTO and SCO session on Afghanistan, where the participants, including India, expressed similar approaches. The US shameful withdrawal opened a Pandora box, increasing the threat of terrorism, extremism, drug trafficking, and not to mention acute social and economic crisis. Our common interest is to assist Afghanistan. Historically, civilizationally, geographically, Afghanistan is an integral part of common Eurasian space of security and cooperation. We are all interested that Afghanistan should become independent, neutral, and united, free from terrorism, war, and living in peace with neighbors. The CSTO and SCO have all resources and capacities to bring the regional cooperation to a new level, having the relevant MOU signed since 2007. The SCO is closely involved in networking with other international structures, including the UN Mission on Afghanistan, and other organizations. Our priority is to strengthen common space of equal and undivided security in Eurasia. And in the framework of the CSTO, the leaders agreed on extended defense and foreign policy coordination to take measures to ensure an effective joint response if the situation in Afghanistan further deteriorates, to increase military capacity and peacekeeping potential, decided to shape a common budget for future research and development in defense. As far as the SCO is concerned, it's about to play even more important role in ensuring multipolar architecture and cooperation and stability in Eurasia. Major task now is to shape up common policy for Afghanistan in order to, first, to support an inclusive intra-Afghan process, and second, more efficiently address the issues of challenges and threats emanating from Afghanistan. For this purpose, it was decided to further enhance capacity of the regional anti-terrorist structure, implement the program on anti-terrorism, extremism and separatism cooperation, anti-drug strategy, information security initiatives. In its activities, the SCO is guided by the central role of the United Nations, the UNSC resolutions, and a UN counterterrorism strategy. Members also agreed, which is very important to the Russian point of view, to support the consensus on early adoption of CCIT. Importantly, the SCO is not about to become a military alliance like the CSTO. In all, we view the SCO as the influential international organization, and its potential is going to be further increased with the accession of Iran as a new full-fledged member. We are very much looking forward to an enhanced cooperation with India bilaterally and multilaterally, based on practical and pragmatic approach, and being aimed of supporting a unified agenda and consensus in the region.